I'm Miss Welch, and I am one of the speech pathologists in the building at Westgate, and we are so excited to have you start at Westgate this year, Mrs. Buck. One of my very favorite things to do is to read. I read a lot for pleasure and for professional reasons, and I'm wondering what you have read this summer, both personally and professionally, that you'd recommend.
So I also love to read as well, and I read a ton too. Working on my doctorate, I read a lot of technical stuff, but I also love to read at night so that it helps me to kind of turn off my brain before I go to bed. So I would say I'm going to break it into two things. I'm going to share something that I've read that's more of a professional nature, and then I'll talk a little bit about kind of the book that I'm reading right now. So the book that I read this summer that I really liked was called The Unlearning Leader. And it was part of why I really loved this book was it was very thin. So sometimes those technical books that we have to read are really thick. And what I found is that many times I think the authors could probably say what they needed to say in much fewer words. But I really loved this book, not only because I actually worked with one of the authors. So Dr. Mike Lubefeld, who's a superintendent, he used to be the superintendent in District 109 in Deerfield, now he's in Highland Park. He actually is one of the authors of this. So it's always fun, I think, when you read a book, when you know someone who wrote it. But what I love about the book is it really challenges you to think differently about why we do certain things. And I think that that's a lesson that I've learned as I've worked as a principal and an assistant principal and even as a teacher. Sometimes we do things because that's the way we've always done them. And this book really kind of challenges that view and wants you to kind of think outside the box and unlearn some of the things that you think that you've learned about the way we should do things. And I always find it really interesting when we kind of challenge ourselves that way, we come up with some really wonderful things that we wouldn't necessarily have done had we not looked at it through a different lens. So it's always refreshing, I think, when you read that. And I think that we, as leaders and educators, and I think this is for kids too, constantly have to kind of challenge ourselves to look differently at different problems. And I think, if you think about where we're at right now, with remote learning and all of those things, we're going to have to unlearn some of the things that we have kind of thought of school, and things are going to change a little bit when we come back to school, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. We just have to think about it in a little bit different way. So that was what I was reading professionally. I think from a personal level, like I said, I love to read before I go to bed because it helps me to turn off my day. And I don't think about what happened during the day. Instead, I kind of get immersed in the story. And reading fiction to me is like watching a movie. I love if you get a really good author and the way they describe things, you kind of get sucked in, and it's like you're watching this movie in your mind. So currently what I'm reading is actually Little Fires Everywhere. And I know that it's a Hulu, they made it into a series on Hulu, and I have not watched it yet. I like to read first if I'm going to then watch a movie, because I think that sometimes it changes what you think about. And I really love what authors are able to do with their words and how I'm able to create that as like a movie or a story in my mind. So that's the book that I'm reading right now, and I'm really enjoying it. What are you reading?
I just started a thriller called Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, do you like thrillers?
I do. I read a lot. So if I read too many thrillers in a row, I start to figure them out too much. So I have to change it up quite a bit. So I read pretty broadly just to keep it interesting. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I love thrillers as well, because I always love having to have my mind think maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I read before bed too. It's the best way for me to kind of shut down, disconnect from electronics right before I try to go to sleep.
Absolutely. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. Vivian likes to chime in and participate in what we're doing.
I hear ya.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're so happy to have you come to Westgate, and we're looking forward to the start of a great year.
Me too. I'm excited as well.